Right, so silage has begun. The man with the rake is just here. I'm just after tipping over here. It's gone about 4:30, so I'm going home now to get things kind of organised for this evening's milking. I don't think anybody's going to be arriving to us this evening. I know the neighbouring farm that they're on, he actually just texted me to let me know they're just after landing with him, and they'll probably be with him until the night is out. You never know, they might come late on, but if not, they'll be here in the morning. An update on my dad. He is in hospital at the moment, but he's doing a lot better and hopefully be home in a couple of days. But he's missing the silage, and he does not like missing the silage. He actually rang me to see how things was going. Had they landed yet? It was all that's going through his mind. With everything that's going on, that was the most important thing to him, to see that the silage gets into the pit safely. What do you want to add to it?
It's so good to smell it. I never want it to go.
There's a nice smell of fresh cut grass. If you're not from the countryside, it's hard to explain. But you guys are watching that are from the countryside. I guarantee you can probably smell it now by looking at it. It's just gone 8 o'clock. Well, I think it's a little bit after 8 o'clock. And the last man who they were with, he sent me a text and he says, well, they're gone from my house. I'd say they'd be with you before night. So I give Richard a ring. Richard would be Ivan's dad, the lad that done the mowing. He's the man that's always on the harvester. And Richard said, yeah, we're actually in your field. The whole lot of us. If you look out the window, you'll see us. So they were in the field. I'm about to get up here and open up doors and get things ready, which I'm doing now. Amazing how quick they go through stuff, because I know the last lad they were with, he'd have a lot of silage to cut, and they were with him at about 4 o'clock or so, and have the whole thing in. We're going to go over in a wee while, but there's a couple of new drivers here, and I want to just wait here just to show them. Wee bit tight here to turn. It's easy when you know how, or know the way it's laid out, but I just want to show them the way to come up here and turn here and go back down. When you're new in a different place, just takes a load or two just to get used to the way it is. So I'm going to hook off this gate here, and the reason I hook this gate off is because it allows them to drive the front of the tractor up here. If they do get kind of half stuck trying to turn, it always comes in well to keep this gate opened, and that way they can just put the nose of the tractor up here, and it gets them out of an awkward spot if they get into it. So do that now first. Right, that's that done. So I don't know how many lads is drawn, so I'll wait till they all have done one pass till I go over to the farm. So I'm going to put you up here. So here's the first man coming up, and I'll have a chat with him first. So we're not going to get any of this pushed back, unfortunately, but that's the way I kind of knew it was going to be. Let's load everything in. And just dump lovely this down on the face of the silage. Just have to be careful for them for the first wee while. Make sure that they won't back too far and get caught out. So I'll stay here for a while until Gary comes and he can direct them. We're not going to get any of this silage pushed back. I knew that. I knew that was going to happen. This man on the pit is normally always the last man to come, and every year there's normally 5 or 6 load in before he comes. I don't mind. We'll just use plan B, and we'll open our pit first the year and make sure that we get our pit used before we start touching any of our bales. What he's doing at the minute is he's taking the top of the pit off, just blending it in, putting a bit of a slope on it, and that way when we do come up against it, it's not going to topple over when we hit again the old stuff, if you kind of get what I mean, which makes sense. It's lovely looking stuff. When he hits into it there, you can smell it. It's lovely silage. So I'm here with Saoirse. Say hello. And she's petrified of the tractors, which you can't blame her, but I'm going to bring her up anyway and just coax her into it slowly, but she's afraid of her life. That's why she's hugging me here. Harry's up there in the pit just finishing off, and we're all down here trying to kick a football, if you can see. On top of a tree. See that flashing light? Well, that's my drone. Oh, geez, very close.
Here, you pull that.
You need to go up another 10 foot. Right, we're just giving it a quick roll here. Now we're going to fire the covers onto it. I'm wearing my sun hat here because it's really good weather now today. Definitely going to get up there over 20 degrees. And I don't want to get the old ball patch. Well, not just ball yet, but let's just say my fields aren't the only things that need to be a bit over sown. It's just gone 11:30 now this morning. Sinead's away to pick up covers for me. Alright, so I said I'd do a quick voice over here as we're covering our pit, just explain what's going on. So it's myself, my brother, my sister, my good wife Sinead, and the dog's getting in the way as always. This is the Rhino Plastics clear seal that we've used now for the past 2 years. You've seen the results for yourself, I don't need to explain anything about it, but any user new to the channel, it's sort of like putting clean or clear film over your sandwiches. It creates an air seal barrier, and that is the number one most important thing when it comes to silage fermentation, getting rid of all access to air getting in under the covers. This is just a brand new black plastic cover going on top of that, and on top of that we'll put one of last year's covers. We don't have to do that. One cover would probably be enough, but it's there. We just said we're going to use it. Now, another thing you might notice is we don't have any covers over the walls. That's basically down to not having the help. Everybody was at work, awkward time during the week, and it's a 2-person, 3-person job, especially with them rails the way they are. So it was also very windy. So that's the real reason why we didn't put the covers over the walls this year. I don't think it's going to make one bit of difference. I think it's the clear seal that does all the work there. But we'll find out in the winter time whether it's a mistake or not. As I say, I'm not too worried about it at the moment. That's the green net that we're putting on at the minute. This is the third section, comes in 3 sections, the one we got. And all that does is protect it against pests, birds picking at it, even you're walking on it yourself. And the bags then going on top don't cause any issues with the black covers underneath. So here's the first bit of bags coming up here. Everybody that helps me with this pit loves the fact that we're not handling tires anymore. They're full of dirty water and everything. It just makes the job so much faster, so much cleaner, and we've seen no bad results from using them. Right, so it's a few days later and the whole chaos, well, it's not really that much chaos, but it does be fun at times. It's all over now and everything is on the cover. Gets us all set up. Everything's just finished with. I'm very happy with the size of our pit. I'm very happy with the stuff that's in our pit. All went very, very well. Unfortunately, the little mishap we had with our drone at the very end, where it landed right on the top of that tall tree. It couldn't have landed on a worse spot. Just right at the very tip of it, and we couldn't get at it no matter what we tried. So we spent most of the evening, myself, my brother, his 2 lads, my own girls, all took turns at trying to figure out how to get it down. We kicked footballs up at it, trying to get it knocked. It was just hanging by a little branch, and none of us could get anywhere close to it. We put them everywhere but the right place. We ended up losing about 6, 7 footballs on the tree, and other ones went into the hedge. It was a bit of a nightmare. We were at it till 11:30 last night. Very frustrating, and it was flashing away with the lights flashing, and even the camera was showing in my controller. I could see ourselves looking, it was looking straight at us on the camera. I just couldn't get my hand on it. I didn't want to leave it out in case it'd get damp, because they're an expensive wee bit of gear. But we had to leave it up, we had to just give up on it. And the following morning, that conduit pipe you use in electric stuff, we ended up joining a few of them together. Had some left over when we were doing the workshop. We joined a few of them together, 3 lengths actually together, and we ended up having to actually put a hook on the end of it, a plastic hook my father uses to put on his shoes. You know, the one that cap the back of your shoe, pull your shoe on. Got one of those on it as well. Broke the branch and it fell halfway down, and it still wouldn't fall down. It was just, yeah. And thankfully we got it down, no damage done, not a scratch on it, which was amazing. You'll see a lot of people sharing silage videos on YouTube, or your harvest, or whatever it may be. Silage time creates a hell of a lot of memories on a farm, and most of my best memories growing up on a farm over just a little over 40 years, the best memories were always made about silage. And just where I stand here on this spot, it might look different behind me, but the memories never change. I remember standing here, and I remember just directly there, just sitting there, was a JF, I think it was 1050, or could it be a 900? I was very young at the time, but I remember a harvest was sitting there in bits on a Saturday evening. It was giving rain that Sunday morning, and the contractor was there with I think it was a bent shaft that was on it, and every man was under it, covered in grease and oil, trying to get it fixed. My mother had to do a run to Dundalk to try and get a shaft for it. It was a dread. I remember standing here, my brother was putting up the silage back in the mid-90s, and he was using my 698 that time, I think it was, or maybe even the 565 actually. 565 it was, 2-wheel drive, and he was coming with a no major push-off rake. And my father, he had an awful tendency to stand in the way. He never had any concept about how dangerous machines was. And he'd always kind of stand in the way and, oh, I'm grand, and everybody would be telling him, roaring at him, get out of the way. But I remember my mother used to stand at the back door of the house, and when the silage pit would get high enough, she'd be fit to see across them roofs, and she'd see him in the pit, and she'd be shouting, would you get him off that pit before he gets killed? And the more you tell my father to get off the pit, the more he'd stay on it. Brother came up one time with a push-off rake. Me and Dad were graping, and he didn't see my father, and end up big load of grass pushed off, and my father disappeared. Which is funny now when you talk about it, but at the time it was a hell of a scare that I got, because I thought he was pushed off the end of the pit. The pit was twice the height it is now. Our pits used to be narrow, and they used to be, yeah, easy, twice the height of that there, and they wouldn't be sloped, nearly straight up, because it was double chop stuff. You could build it like a cock of hay. It would have knitted into itself, so you could build it nearly straight up. Frightening how it used to be. Thankfully he was just under the grass, because the hand came up, I'm alright, I'm here, I'm fine. Whew. I remember another time our neighbour came up with a David Brown. All we wanted him for was to actually grape. I was very, very young. Instead of parking up his David Brown up on the hill where he was supposed to, he took a notion he'd give the pit a roll, and when he versed up for the very first time, my brother was coming down with the rake. He was after rolling it frontwards up and down. He came down the rake, back wheel, straight through a pin, And that was a couple of hours trying to get that yoke off the pit, bush tyre. Yeah. And another thing you've got to understand is silage time brings the whole family together. It also used to bring the whole community together. Your neighbours would help you with your silage, and then you'd vice versa go over and give them a hand with theirs. That doesn't happen as much now because a lot of the stuff is done by machinery. But that time, and I remember it very well, most stuff was done with grapes and one man putting up. If you had a push-off rake, you were very lucky, but a lot of it was done single chop, just with an ordinary rake. You'd drop it, drive forward, and every man dig into it, graping it back. Remember another neighbour, may his soul rest, I'm up here one time on a Massey 165, wee narrow tyres on it, and again he was only asked to come up and give a hand with graping, and most people just hated graping. And they all take this notion, going up, they're going to rowl the pit, we'll rowl the pit instead, and it's a great way of getting out of things. But he came up anyway, he wouldn't have been afraid of work now, this man, in fairness. And he versed up, but he had an awful tendency to go too near the edges, and it was frightening. We're talking a pit that would have been 15 to 20 foot high, and no walls. He always got out of it, but until one time he didn't. Just got himself into a bad angle where the back of the tractor was facing out towards the edge and the front of the tractor was facing that way. He was just stuck in a real bad spot. So he got off the tractor, she was about to go over. We got a couple of tractors up in the pit. We had to stop what we were doing for about 2-3 hours. Ropes tied onto the wheels, onto the cab. We lifted it with ropes. We managed to get it pulled. We had a great big hole on this side of the pit, and we managed to get it pulled back into shape and got it off where it was. But I remember it well. I also remember several arguments. Standing in the wee house that's just behind you here. That little house there. One day with the contractor and my dad, myself and my brother, and possibly a few other ones in the house as well. And the silage had to stop because the water was running down the street. It poured for 2 days. My father was like a pull. But you remember those things, everything just doesn't go well. Right here in our backfield, up there about 200-300 yards, I remember standing looking at a brand new Red Rock trailer. It was just after coming. I think this could have been the second job it was ever on. Lovely trailer. 5 minutes later, we were graping silage and we were using the front loader to take the grass out of it while it was sitting upside down or on its side, just right in this spot. There was a lot of bad words said that day. This spot right here, going down to our gate at the bottom of our big hill, Riscon trailer, upside down on top of that hedge. Was a joy trying to grape the silage out of that, out onto the road and into another trailer. Yeah, that was a good one. In our house, dinner time meant a 5-course meal. My mother used to just go to town on cooking dinners. I remember my father used to give out about the amount of money my mother was spending on dinners, but that was her pride. She liked to cook a full-on dinner, and I used to love it because the dinner was, you wouldn't get that for the rest of the year. You nearly wouldn't get it on Christmas Day. But I remember her shouting out from the door that the ovens wasn't working. So we passed her remarks that the power must be off or something. And shortly after, ESB trucks come up the lane, way flying over there, and over to our meadow, which is way over that direction. And we said to ourselves, something's wrong, because we knew it had been an hour before the last load had come, and normally they were coming every 5 to 10 minutes. But our meadow at the time, we used to cut silage in our meadow, and there's an ESB pole right in the middle of it. A young lad was coming in and he caught the ESB pole between the tractor and the trailer and took the ESB pole down on top of himself. Thankfully he wasn't injured, and that knocked the power off for half the countryside because there was a major wire that was running towards our local town. One final thing I remember, there's loads of them, any amount of them, but I remember this one sticks out in my head the most. I was 13 years old. We had no walls. Someone would have to be on the sides, keeping the sides the whole time, maybe 2 people. But I took on to do it on my own that particular year. I said, I'll stay on the sides, I'll build the sides, and just leave me alone, let me at it. So I took into that, no easy task, because grass would fall down, you'd have to throw it up again. And then my father would tell you to turn the grape backwards and beat the pit. Rather than trying to pull it down, you'd beat it hard with the grape to get it a firm in, which worked. Once you learn how to do it, it's not incredibly hard to do, but it's just, you're at it constantly. But I remember we had our pit done, and I was extremely proud of it. Everything was spotless around, the sides were so straight. Even my dad said, Jesus, you've done a hell of a job there. And just as I was about to finish up, I was standing here, and my brother came along with the tractor, and I always to this day said he'd done it on purpose. He drove over to that corner with a full rake load, pushed it off as he was coming back, and threw a massive lump just right down on top of me, all over the ground and everything. The stride all before him, and just said, and we finished. me dying and gasping for a glass of water, because them times it used to be baking hot. I was peed off, put it that way. I could talk about those memories. They're just everywhere I look. I know the positions, I know where it happened. They have stayed with me since I was a child, and always stay with me. I know they're the kind of memories you never forget. And that's what growing up on a family farm is all about. The arguments, the breakdowns, the good times, the bad times, they're all memories that stay with you for life. And I wouldn't change any of them. Thanks very much for watching, guys. Till the next one, talk to you again. It says, are you recording? I wish I was. I'm just after taking the head of myself. It's the bloody 10th time of that door. See that cracker up there? It wasn't there when we moved into the house. That's from me hitting me head of it. It's a bit hard to show you from this angle because we're standing quite low compared to the house.
No, I'm just small.
You're not even very tall.
We want to change this one.
So we have a dilemma.
I want to keep it. I don't know. Do you want to keep the fireplace?
No.
I like it. I do. I think it's lovely because that's the way it would have been years and years ago.
I hate it.
I'm putting you in that house on your own.
That'll be happening. But just in case I want a games room or a pool table. I'm not sure you're up for that or not. I don't think I told you yet.
I don't intend to go looking for antique.
No. We'll be the only antiques in it when we move in.
2 Crocs.